Welcome back to True Echo, where real courage meets raw truth. Today's story begins in a dusty courtroom in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where an 81-year-old black veteran walks in wearing a Bronze Star, and gets fined for it. But what the judge didn't know. She was about to face a man whose legal mind could match anyone in the room, and whose quiet dignity would leave the nation speechless. This isn't just about land or medals, it's about legacy, truth, and what justice really looks like. Keep watching. The courthouse in Tulsa smelled of lemon oil and old books. Its marble floors held the weight of nearly a century of law, some fair, some not. On that morning, no one expected a storm to walk in wearing brown Oxfords and a weathered blazer. Thurston Rayner moved slowly but deliberately, his posture upright despite his age. On his chest gleamed a bronze star, pinned just above the heart. He held a folder under his arm, leather, creased with age, just like him. As he passed the wooden pews, murmurs followed. No one said his name, but heads turned. There was something about him. The courtroom quieted as he took his place. Judge Celeste Grantham sat behind the bench, known citywide for her rigid sense of decorum and clipped words. "Mr. Rayner," she said, not bothering to look up. "Remove that medal or face a contempt fine. This is a courtroom, not a parade." A chill swept the room. Thurston looked down at the medal, then raised his eyes. "Your Honor, I'm not here to put on a show. That medal's not decoration, it's a part of me. I wear it the way I wear my name." Judge Grantham barely blinked. "That's irrelevant. Personal insignia is prohibited unless approved by this court, $200 fine. Let's proceed." No outburst came. Just a slow nod. "Understood," Thurston said. Then he opened his folder with the same calm with which he had once chambered around in a foxhole. When asked about his attorney, Thurston replied simply, "I'll be representing myself." The other side's lawyer, Wesley Brandt, smirked. Expensive suit, polished language, and the casual arrogance of a man used to winning. He probably expected an easy victory. After all, it was just a property dispute. Or so he thought. The plaintiff, Dean Melling, a smug developer barely in his 40s, stood beside Brandt. His claim? A 6-foot-wide strip of land behind Thurston's house now belonged to him, based on a recent survey. On that land stood 3 peach trees Thurston had planted nearly 20 years ago. Trees that had grown up alongside his grandchildren. Brandt opened the case with aerial photos, drone shots, legal statutes, and technical jargon. Everything looked airtight. The evidence stacked like bricks. But then, Thurston raised his hand. "Your Honor," he said respectfully, "before I respond to the boundary argument, I'd like the court to review a missing chain of title between 1992 and 2003. Something's not right." He passed the bailiff 2 documents, one showing the deed transfer, and another from 1998, granting an easement giving him legal access to maintain the disputed strip of land. Judge Grantham studied the pages, her brows knitting. Brandt leaned in, whispering urgently to his assistant. Thurston stood motionless, quiet as stone. "You're citing an easement?" the judge asked. "No, ma'am. I'm citing adverse possession," Thurston said. Oklahoma Title 12, Section 93. 20 years of unchallenged, continuous care. I paid taxes. Maintained the land. I've got the receipts. Brandt scoffed. "That's quite a legal interpretation, for someone without an attorney." Thurston turned toward him, voice calm. "Mr. Brandt, I served 5 years in Vietnam, then put myself through law school while raising 3 children. I earned that degree, even if I didn't need a courtroom to prove it. Don't mistake quiet for ignorance." A pin could have dropped in that courtroom and made headlines. For a few long seconds, the air in courtroom 6B felt electrified. Even Judge Grantham, known for never flinching, seemed to hesitate as Thurston Rayner stood, his words sharp, measured, undeniable. It wasn't bravado. It was something heavier. The weight of truth. The weight of time. Objection to personal commentary, Brandt said, voice suddenly higher pitched than before. Sustained, Judge Grantham said. But noted, she added, her tone quieter now, almost reflective. She turned back to Thurston. Do you have the supporting documents for your claim? I do. He produced a second folder. 3 sets of documents were passed to the bailiff, a decade of tax records, signed affidavits from neighbors, and dated photographs. Some photos showed a much younger Thurston, shovel in hand, beside tiny saplings. Other photos were newer, his grandkids with juice-covered cheeks, laughing beneath heavy branches. One older woman, cane in hand, stood when called. Mrs. Gentry, the judge asked, you signed this affidavit? Yes, Your Honor, she replied. I've lived next door to Mr. Rayner for 31 years. Watched him plant those trees. Watched them grow. That land was his long before that man in the suit ever showed up. Brandt's response was clinical. Sentiment doesn't supersede legal boundaries. We're prepared to bring in a professional surveyor. That won't be necessary yet, Judge Grantham replied, scanning the easement again. She turned back to Thurston. Where did you say you studied law? He adjusted his glasses. Winfield College of Law. Class of 76. School closed in 92. But we trained hard. Someone in the back clapped once. The room was too moved to object. Grantham didn't smile, but her voice softened. Please proceed with your argument. With quiet precision, Thurston unfolded 3 maps. Hand-drawn, annotated, and backed by community records. This, he said, is the original survey from 1996. You'll see the property line stops just before the drainage ditch. He flipped to the next sheet. This survey, filed in 2005, shows the line moved 6 feet east, cutting into the land I've cared for. But there's no amendment in the county records. No notice. No hearing. Brandt jumped in. Speculative. No, Thurston said. Procedural. I'm requesting judicial review. The zoning change was never publicly recorded. Grantham tapped her pen on the bench. Mr. Brandt? The lawyer hesitated. We'll need to review our filings. In the meantime, the judge said, this court will initiate an internal review. All construction on the plaintiff's parcel is temporarily frozen. A low gasp rippled through the pews. Dean Melling leaned toward Brandt, whispering angrily. Brandt nodded, then stood. We request a continuance. No, Thurston said plainly. You've had 6 months. You used drones. You cut my trees. No more delays. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Melling, has your team taken action on the land? Some minimal trimming, Brandt replied quickly. Thurston raised another photo. 3 trees, he said, voice calm but steely, cut to the base. Last week. Here are the stumps. The courtroom leaned in. Judge Grantham's jaw set. Mr. Melling, she asked slowly, did you or your employees remove these trees? Melling shifted. Our project manager handled site prep. I wasn't aware. Don't insult this court, Grantham snapped. Brandt sat down. Melling stared at the floor. But Thurston remained steady. Not angry. Just rooted. The judge leaned forward. You've paid tax. Cared for the land. Your neighbors affirm it. The boundary change was never recorded. And your trees have been destroyed. Yes, ma'am. She looked to her clerk. Pull every document from 1996 forward. Contact the zoning office. Then she looked back at Thurston. You came prepared, Mr. Rayner. I had to, he said. Not my first fight. Just hoped it'd be my last. At that moment, the courtroom wasn't just a courtroom. It was a stage for something far bigger, about pride, history, and the law. And it wasn't over yet. After the judge called a recess for lunch, no one moved. It was as if the room had become sacred ground, charged with the kind of energy that made people forget their phones, their meetings, even their hunger. Thurston gathered his papers, slowly, like a craftsman finishing the first part of a larger sculpture. In the hallway, Judge Grantham didn't retreat to chambers. Instead, she quietly stepped out behind Thurston, watching him thumb through that same blue folder he'd carried like armor. "You said you practiced law," she said suddenly. He turned slightly, but didn't seem surprised. "Mostly for veterans. Legal advisor. Kansas City. I handled claims, appeals, housing disputes, discharge upgrades. All the stuff no one else wanted." "You never went private?" "I had offers," Thurston said, voice soft. "But I figured someone ought to help the folks who got buried in the system." She nodded, lips pressed. "You've done your homework." He gave a polite half-smile. "Always do." Then she asked something else. "Why didn't you mention your background when I issued the fine?" Thurston raised his eyes. "Didn't think I needed to. The medal shouldn't have been a problem to begin with." She didn't reply. Just stood there a moment longer, arms crossed, no longer a judge, just a woman who might have remembered what it meant to listen. Back inside the courtroom, word had already spread. A young black law student, Isaiah Winslow, leaned forward in his seat like he was watching a master class unfold. His notebook overflowed with scribbles, legal citations, questions, names he needed to research. When court resumed at exactly 1 p.m., Grantham entered with new purpose. The clerk handed her a packet. She flipped through it, stone-faced, then spoke. "We've received confirmation from the Tulsa County Recorder's Office. No registered boundary amendment was filed in 2005. Mr. Brandt, at best this is an oversight. At worst, misrepresentation." Brandt stood, flustered. "Your Honor, we'd like more time." "No," Grantham said. "We proceed." Thurston didn't use the podium. He simply stepped forward. "I'd like to submit my closing argument," he said. "The law's been cited. The evidence filed. I'll say this, law isn't just about property lines. It's about responsibility. That strip of land fed my family. I maintained it. I paid taxes. What they're doing. That's not development. That's theft with paperwork." Silence. But he wasn't finished. He pulled out a small packet and handed it to the bailiff. "I'm requesting discovery into how Mr. Melling's zoning permit was approved, despite the missing amendment. This signature," he tapped the page, "belongs to a zoning official who left office a year before this was filed. I had it reviewed. It doesn't match any signature on file from 2005. Grantham's expression darkened. "You're alleging forgery?" "I'm saying it deserves scrutiny." Brandt jumped up. "Objection, hearsay, speculation." "It's a discovery request," Grantham cut in. "Overruled." Another wave of whispers. Isaiah's pen froze mid-sentence. Even the gallery leaned forward. Thurston's voice remained steady. "I wasn't going to bring this up. But they cut down my trees. And I got fined for wearing the only medal I ever earned for doing something right. So I figured, might as well speak the whole truth." And then the courtroom door opened. A girl, 12, maybe 13, walked in with her mother. "Grandpa," she called. Thurston turned, his expression softening as he held out his arms. "Come here, baby." She ran to him, hugged him tightly. "Did they take the trees?" He held her close. "Some of them. But they'll grow back." Grantham didn't interrupt. She simply watched, her hand frozen on the bench. "That girl helped me plant those," Thurston said. "That's her history too." The judge nodded slowly, her voice quieter now. Let the record show the court recognizes Mr. Rayner has raised valid concerns regarding procedural fraud. Survey will be submitted to forensic review. All construction remains halted. Brant leaned in to whisper something to Melling. But Melling looked like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. And then, Grantham did something no one saw coming. Mr. Rayner, she said. Can you tell me what made you study law in the first place? Thurston looked around the courtroom, searching not for the answer, but for the right way to tell it. I came home from Vietnam with shrapnel in my shoulder and a discharge paper that had more holes than truth. My benefits were denied. I didn't have the money for a lawyer. So I sat in a library. Every day. For 4 years. Took notes by hand. Learned the law so I could fight my own case. He paused. But what stuck with me wasn't winning, it was the line of other vets I saw sleeping in their cars, getting turned away at the VA. I figured, if I could help one of them, maybe I'd sleep better at night. Grantham blinked. Not with surprise. But something more honest. Thank you, she said. And no one in that courtroom, not even the marble walls, would ever forget what happened next. The courtroom had changed. It no longer felt like a place where lawyers postured and paperwork determined worth. It had become something deeper, a living, breathing reminder that justice could still have a soul. Judge Grantham sat forward, the weight of everything settling across her brow. Mr. Rayner, she said, you've raised the issue of a forged signature on the 2005 survey. I'm issuing a formal review. Thurston nodded once. But instead of sitting down, he walked slowly back to the exhibit table and pulled out one final folder. I also made an open records request from the city's permit office, he said, voice even. I wanted to see which variances had been granted for Mr. Melling's project, especially any that allowed him to build within 5 feet of an existing residential lot. He handed the sealed packet to the bailiff, who passed it up to the bench. Grantham opened it. Her eyes scanned the contents. There were no such variances granted, Thurston continued. Not in 2019. Not in 2020. Not ever. What that means, Your Honor, is that this project never should have been approved for construction on that strip in the first place. Grantham raised an eyebrow. Are you certain? I cross-referenced parcel numbers. Only 3 variances were issued in the last 10 years on that block. None matched the permit used by Melling's company. Brant shot up so fast his chair fell behind him. Your Honor, I move to strike, this is beyond the scope. Grantham raised a hand, eyes still locked on the documents. Sit down, Mr. Brant. The gallery buzzed. Melling's face had gone pale. I've seen enough to warrant deeper inquiry, the judge said. Thank you, Mr. Rayner. But before the moment could settle, a bailiff approached the bench with a sealed envelope marked urgent. This just came from the Tulsa Zoning Review Office, the bailiff announced. Judge Grantham opened it. Her eyes narrowed. The city has confirmed the parcel number listed on Mr. Melling's permit was retired in 2010. These permits, she said, lifting the paper slowly, are invalid. Gasps. Audible this time. Brant slumped. Melling's jaw clenched as he stared down at his manicured hands. Mr. Melling, Grantham said coolly. You'll cease all construction immediately. You'll pay for the destruction of Mr. Rayner's trees and cover all legal fees related to this hearing. And if further investigation shows documents were altered, you could be facing criminal charges. Melling opened his mouth, but no sound came. Thurston stepped forward again. Your Honor, he said gently, I'd like it formally recognized in writing that I hold legal possession of that strip of land. I want it filed today. So ordered, the judge replied, striking her gavel once. But the day wasn't over. From the second row, a young man raised his hand, awkward, uncertain, but determined. Your Honor, he asked. Grantham looked surprised. Identify yourself for the record. Isaiah Winslow, he said. Second-year law student. Tulsa College of Law. I'm here on an observation assignment. Proceed, she said. Isaiah stood. His voice shook, but not with fear. With conviction. I just want to thank this court for what happened today. I've watched hearings where people like Mr. Rayner, people who look like me, get steamrolled. But today, he taught more law in 2 hours than some of my professors have in a semester. There were no interruptions. He reminded me, Isaiah said, that law isn't just rules. It's the courage to stand your ground when everyone around you pretends you don't have one. He sat. Thurston looked back at him and gave a small nod, nothing theatrical, just enough to say, I see you. Grantham sat in silence for a long beat. Then she spoke, not to any attorney, but to the room. When I saw Mr. Rayner walk in this morning, I saw a man wearing a military medal in my courtroom and I reacted with authority, not judgment. That was a mistake. No one moved. I focused on protocol, not principle. That fine was issued in error, and I hereby rescind it. Thurston nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. But she wasn't finished. And let me also say, for the record, that the presence of your medal, worn with dignity and pride, didn't disturb the decorum of this court. It reminded it what service looks like. No one applauded. No one needed to. Grantham cleared her throat. This court recognizes Mr. Rayner's claim to the land. The injunction against Mr. Melling stands. A restitution hearing will be scheduled within 30 days. She stood. Court is adjourned. The gavel hit wood. But no one rushed out. Not even the reporters. They all watched as Thurston collected his papers, slow, deliberate, composed. Not because he'd won. But because, finally, he'd been heard. As the courtroom slowly emptied, something unexpected happened. No one rushed for the exits, and no one reached for their phones first. People lingered in the gallery, whispering, stunned, some moved to tears, not because a man had won a legal dispute, but because they had just witnessed what justice was supposed to feel like. Thurston didn't walk out like a victor. He moved with the same steady dignity he'd walked in with. His granddaughter ran up beside him, hand clutching his, and his daughter followed close behind. Reporters hovered near the back, but none dared approach him right away. Even they knew, instinctively, this moment was something else. He wasn't a man craving headlines. He was a man who'd already said everything worth hearing. Outside, as the courthouse doors swung open, the sun hit just right, casting long shadows down the steps. For a beat, Thurston paused at the top. Then a slow, steady clap began, just one pair of hands. Then another. Then more. Within seconds, a crowd that had gathered outside, neighbors, veterans, city workers, even strangers, joined in. It wasn't raucous. It wasn't performative. It was measured. Grounded. Like a collective heartbeat saying, we saw. And it mattered. His granddaughter tugged at his sleeve. Grandpa, did you win? He looked down at her, his voice low but firm. No, baby. I held my ground. Those close enough to hear it repeated it in whispers, almost like a mantra. He held his ground. His daughter gripped his arm tighter. You didn't just hold it, Daddy. You reminded people that some things still matter. A local news anchor stepped closer, microphone in hand. Mr. Rayner, sir, how does it feel to be vindicated? Thurston raised his hand gently, not to wave, but to still the air. I'm not here to be a headline, he said. I'm here because I was tired of being ignored. I've seen too many men buried without ever getting to say their piece. Then he turned away from the cameras. Walked down the courthouse steps with his family. No triumphant fist in the air. No declaration of victory. Just calm. Certain. Unshaken. Behind him, Judge Grantham had stepped out the side door. She didn't join the cameras either. She stood off to the side, watching quietly. Watching the man she'd misjudged do what too many never had the chance to. Isaiah Winslow, still clutching his notebook, hesitated. Then stepped forward. "You got something you want to say?" Thurston asked, without looking at him. Isaiah nodded. "Back inside, you said you took notes in the library?" "Longhand?" "Stacked in boxes somewhere," Thurston replied with a chuckle. "But I doubt anyone could read my handwriting." "I'd like to scan them," Isaiah said. "Make them digital. Share them with students. Schools. Kids who think they don't belong in courtrooms like this." Thurston studied him. "You think people care about some dusty old notes from a man they've never heard of?" "I do," Isaiah replied. "And after today, a lot more will." Before Thurston could answer, another man pushed through the crowd. Mid-50s, blazer slightly wrinkled, holding a business card. "Mr. Rayner, I'm with the Tulsa Veterans Legacy Fund. We saw the hearing. If you'd ever be willing to speak, even just once, or advise." Thurston raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want someone who just called out half the zoning board?" The man grinned. "Exactly the kind of voice we need." Thurston glanced at his daughter. She gave the tiniest nod. "I'll think about it," he said. "But I'm not putting on a suit." "You don't need to," the man replied. From the crowd's edge, another older veteran in a navy cap shouted, "You still got those peach tree cuttings, Thurston?" Thurston smiled, real this time. "You bet I do. Save me one. I'm planting it next to my porch." "You've already planted something better," someone else added. "Lessons for the whole damn city." Laughter rippled, not the loud kind, but warm, genuine. Someone yelled, "Semper Fi." Another waved a small American flag. It wasn't a celebration. It wasn't a protest. It was something rare in public life these days. It was respect. As Thurston stepped onto the sidewalk, leaving the courthouse behind, he had no idea that the moment was already spreading. The clips would go viral. The transcript would circulate. His words, "I didn't win. I held my ground," would become a rallying cry for veterans, lawyers, and everyday people across the country. But for now, he just wanted coffee. And maybe a moment to breathe. The next morning, before Tulsa even finished its first pot of coffee, the story had hit the front page of the Tulsa Tribune. Black and white photo. Top fold. A quiet, proud image of Thurston Rayner standing on the courthouse steps, granddaughter at his side, bronze star catching the morning light. The headline read, "Veterans Land Battle Ends with Apology and Justice." TV anchors echoed it by noon. Talk shows debated it by evening. The clip of Thurston's quiet defiance, "I didn't win. I held my ground," was reposted over 1 million times by Tuesday. But if anyone had gone looking for Thurston's reaction online, they would have found nothing. Because Thurston wasn't scrolling. He wasn't giving interviews, either. His daughter, firm in her boundaries, turned down podcast requests and waved away news vans parked across the street. Her father didn't want to go viral. He wanted his peace. And his trees. At exactly 9 a.m. that same morning, a familiar car pulled into his driveway. Judge Celeste Grantham stepped out, not in robes, not in power heels. Just slacks, a blazer, and a thin folder tucked under her arm. Thurston met her halfway down the walk. "Didn't expect a house call," he said. "I figured this was better than an email," she replied. He motioned to the porch. "Hope you drink coffee." "I do," she said. "Especially after the day we had." They sat side by side. The air was mild. A breeze rustled the maples behind the fence. Grantham opened the folder. "This is your official court statement," she said. "Land ownership recognized. Contempt fine erased. Documents recorded. Thurston folded the letter and slid it into his pocket without reading it. Appreciated, he said. But Grantham didn't leave. She stayed still, fingers laced on her lap. That case reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? He asked. That justice isn't sterile, she said. It's not just code sections and citations. It's human. He nodded. Most folks forget that. The ones who wear robes. The ones who pay taxes. Even the ones like me. I didn't just forget it, she said. I ran from it. When I started as a judge, I was the only black woman in my class. Courtrooms were ice. I got tough. Uncompromising. I followed the book because I thought it would keep them from questioning me. He studied her face. And did it? Sometimes, she admitted. But I lost something else along the way. Empathy, Thurston said. Yes, she whispered. And the ability to be wrong. They were quiet a while. She watched a bird pick at the grass near the fence. Then she turned to him again. You ever think of retiring? She asked. Every time I try, he replied, someone comes along with zoning paperwork and a chainsaw. She laughed, the first real laugh he'd heard from her. I have one more thing, she said. Not on the record. He raised an eyebrow. All right. We're forming a new community legal review board. Zoning disputes, property claims, easement conflicts. City funded. I'd like you to be on it. Thurston leaned back in his chair. You sure they want someone who needs glasses to read street signs? They want someone who knows what justice looks like when it's been ignored. He scratched his chin. You already got my mornings tied up with these peach trees. She smiled. You can bring a basket to every meeting. That's how you bribe the board now. No, she said. That's how we rebuild trust. He looked out across the yard, where his granddaughter had planted a new sapling just days ago. Its thin limbs reached for the sun. Finally, he said, yeah. I'll do it. Grantham stood. Brushed off her slacks. Offered him her hand. I'm glad we met the way we did. Funny, he said, shaking her hand. So am I. She turned to leave, but paused once more. Oh, and Mr. Rayner. Yes. You're still not allowed to wear the medal in court. He blinked, confused, until she added. But next time, I'll wear mine too. She was already walking back to her car before he could reply. He didn't need to. The days that followed were quieter, but not empty. Thurston's phone rang more often now, though he rarely answered. Letters arrived in bunches, handwritten, typed, emailed and printed, stacked in rubber-banded piles his daughter helped sort through every evening. Some letters were from veterans who hadn't spoken about their service in decades. Others came from law students, civil rights groups, even high school kids. One envelope carried a single note, they cut down your trees. But not your roots. Another stood out, a 17-year-old girl in Birmingham wrote. You made me want to study law. Before that, I didn't think courtrooms were for people like us. Now I see they can be. Thurston read that one 3 times, then folded it gently and placed it in the inside pocket of the same blazer where his Bronze Star had always rested. In the backyard, 3 new saplings stood in the exact place where the old trees had once flourished. His granddaughter helped him water them every other day, her hands tiny compared to the garden hose, but determined. Think they'll grow back strong? She asked one morning. He touched one leaf between his fingers. They already are. That same afternoon, Isaiah Winslow arrived with a tablet under his arm. I finished scanning your notes, he said. Added the court audio. Uploaded it all to a small archive I'm building, calling it voices that weren't heard until they spoke. Thurston blinked. You archived my legal scribbles. "Sir," Isaiah said, "what you did wasn't just law. It was legacy." They sat on the porch together for a while. Isaiah asked questions about old cases. Vets denied housing because a box had been checked wrong, widows denied benefits, records mysteriously lost. Thurston told stories easily now. Laughed sometimes. Cursed other times. Isaiah recorded some of it, with permission. The plan was to create a digital exhibit. Something future students, and maybe even judges, could learn from. "You gave people permission to be heard," Isaiah said. "And that's rarer than a verdict." 2 weeks later, the Tulsa City Council voted unanimously to name the Zoning Review Board after him. The Thurston Rayner Community Equity Panel. He didn't attend the ceremony. But he sent a letter. Simple. Direct. Justice is not a favor. It's a responsibility. I'm honored, but I don't want plaques or statues. Just make sure the next time a quiet man walks into court with truth in his pocket, you don't ask him to take it off before speaking. The words hit home harder than any speech might have. And still, stories rippled outward. Other towns began investigating their zoning boards. Easement records were revisited. One county in Arkansas halted development on a project after discovering the land had once been promised to a family of World War II veterans. None of this made Thurston famous. That was never the point. He still delivered a basket of peaches every Friday to the local shelter. When asked why, he said, "Those trees owe me nothing. But I still owe plenty." One evening, as the sun stretched across the East Tulsa Community Garden, a new plaque appeared at the far back corner, small, brushed steel, nothing fancy. It read. He held his ground, so others could grow. No lights. No ribbon. Just a bench nearby and the quiet sound of wind through sapling leaves. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a person can do isn't shout in the face of injustice. Sometimes, it's standing up, quietly, fully, and completely, with the truth. This is what justice looks like when it's lived, not just litigated. Thurston Rayner didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard. He reminded us that courage doesn't always come with noise, sometimes, it comes with calm, conviction, and a folder full of truth. If this story moved you, share it. Let people know that quiet dignity can change everything. Subscribe to True Echo for more stories that remind us what justice should feel like, human. Comment below with your thoughts, and who you believe needs to hear this.